I had said to him, when he told me all the things that his organization does, I said, I don't know how you're going to cover it all. And he can't. He just can't cover it all. Okay, the second topic, succession planning, will be presented by Ryan Harris, Esquire, another SPHR. Ryan is the Chief Human Resources Officer for MetroPlus Health Plan. Let's give him a round of applause. Yay.
Good morning. Is it just me, or is it ironic that a group called the 5 O'Clock Club has these meetings at 8:30 in the morning? Most presentations that I've experienced on succession planning, they usually talk about the philosophy surrounding the concept rather than implementation. But what do you do after you present the business reasons for succession planning to your CEO, and the CEO and the other leaders in the organization decide to greenlight the project? Well, today I'm going to share some experiences with what has so far been a successful implementation of succession planning. But first, I want to share a very unusual succession planning story with you. By a show of hands, how many of you out there know who Marian Anderson is, or recognize the name Marian Anderson? Oh, quite a few, quite a few. Okay. Marian Anderson was probably the most celebrated contralto of the 20th century. In 1939, her manager had booked a performance, a concert for her at Constitution Hall in DC. But when the owners of Constitution Hall found out that she was black, they refused to let her perform there. So in response, the president at the time and the first lady at the time, Franklin Roosevelt and Eleanor Roosevelt, arranged for her to have a concert on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. And it was on Easter Sunday, April 9th, 1939. The concert was broadcast nationally to millions, and about, get this, in 1939, 75,000 people appeared in person. Later, in 1955, Marian Anderson became the first African-American woman vocal soloist to perform at the Metropolitan Opera. Now, she passed away in 1993, and then in 1998, there was an award that was established in her honor, and that award is every year given to an artist whose leadership benefits humanity. Now, this year, I happened to be fortunate enough to get a ticket to the Marian Anderson Award Show, and it was held a couple of months ago in Philadelphia at this place called the Kimmel Center, which is the equivalent, it's the Philadelphia equivalent of the Lincoln Center in New York. And this year, the Marian Anderson Award was given to Mia Farrow. Now, while many of us remember Mia Farrow, the actress, she was in, over 45 movies. She, Rosemary's Baby, The Great Gatsby. She was longtime girlfriend of Woody Allen. Some of us even remember that she was once married to Frank Sinatra. But this year, however, she was presented with an award for her humanitarian efforts in the Darfur region of the Sudan. Now, in her acceptance speech, she told this gruesome story of a woman whose 3 children were murdered right before her eyes. And if that wasn't bad enough, the militiamen that murdered her children raped her. I'm going to spare you the details, but she went on to talk about how 300,000 people were murdered and about 2.7 million people were run from their villages and had to abandon the cultures and flee for their lives. Now, witnessing the destruction of the society firsthand, Mia is now working to capture and transfer the knowledge of the culture that is slowly disappearing. She's interviewed people in Darfur. She's taken video footage of their customs, including their wedding ceremonies, funerals, rites of passage, dances, irrigation practices, recipes, and a host of other oral traditions. Through her efforts, she has created a knowledge and culture repository that will preserve the societal beliefs, practices, and it will ensure that when the killing stops, the traditions are captured and documented for the generations that follow. Now, this is indeed the definition of succession planning. It's our ability to retain and transfer knowledge for the use in preparing strategies for the people and the years ahead. Surely people with less experience in any organization can benefit from the knowledge of those who walk before them. On the last page of your handout, you're going to see an outline of the Metro Plus succession planning implementation. You can follow along with me using this outline. As you can see, the implementation was organized into 8 phases, and I'll go phase by phase, and I'll touch on the highlights of each phase, and during question and answers, I'll be glad to fill in any of the details. Otherwise, my contact information is on the handout, and I'll be happy to answer any questions at any time. But let's start with phase 1. In phase 1 of the succession plan, we researched the succession planning software, and we chose the software that we felt best suited our needs. Some of the requirements that we considered for that software were talent profiles, built-in competency libraries, individual development plan templates, and a knowledge repository, which I will discuss a little bit more in a moment. In phase 2, we did a couple of things. First, we identified our areas of greatest risk, and in doing so, we found out that there were actually several people in our company who were the only individuals to ever occupy a particular position in the 26-year history of our company. We also found that 225 of our 900 employees were 50 years old or older. We also had to consider the fact that there were a good amount of employees that are in highly specialized positions with highly specialized skills that would be incredibly hard to replace should they choose to leave unexpectedly. Now, ultimately, what we did is we ended up choosing 16 positions for our first, to be the subjects of our first succession planning cycle. And the scary thing is of those 16 positions that we selected as our positions at risk, 4 people left during the process. Now, another thing we did in phase 2 is we had to define and detail the roles of each member of the implementation team and each participant. We wanted to make sure that there were no surprises and that everybody knew exactly what was expected of them during the process. Now, during phase 2, we spent a lot of time differentiating between succession planning and replacement planning. A lot of the leaders in our organization, in particular, were tending to default to this replacement planning during the succession planning discussion. And succession planning for us is creating a pool of high potential individuals that are groomed and developed to somewhat compete for vacant positions in the future, whereas replacement planning is selecting one successor and grooming that one individual to replace the incumbent at a time in the future. With succession planning, you engage groups and pools of individuals. With replacement planning, you only engage one. Okay, moving on to phase 3, let's call this the Mia Farrow phase. Here we converted each participant's individual knowledge into institutional memory. The incumbents in the position at risk go through a series of interviews that we capture and document their knowledge. And folks, let me tell you, this is way, way, way beyond your garden variety job description. What we do is we document their history. First, we start with documenting their history with the company. This is the history, that is to say, the history that they've gained about the organization during their employment. For those that have been with the organization for more than 10 years, the wealth of information that they would have would far surpass the information that somebody with far fewer years would have. Then we move on to document their personal role with the company. It's important for persons who follow their footsteps to understand how they've developed in the organization. This information could assist their successor with understanding growth opportunities, relationships, duties, functions, and the methods that made the incumbent successful in their position. In addition, knowing their personal history will assist them in helping the successors to understand what the position looked like from the incumbent's perspective. We then move on to document the incumbent's necessary working relationships. And regardless of what position that anyone performs in an organization, there are a multitude of relationships that exist. Some may be political, some may be social, some may be mandated by law. Some of those relationships may serve as critical alliances to the incumbents in the existing positions. In order for somebody to be successful as a successor, it's important that they understand the relationships that are required for each interaction, and also those that the incumbent established and the reason for which the incumbent established those positions. Next, we document the person's decision-making authority, incumbent's decision-making authority. With every position in an organization, there is a certain amount of decisions that somebody makes, and regardless of the magnitude of that decision, any decision that they're responsible for making should be documented to assist others in understanding that person's responsibility. Next, we talk about the meetings that that person would attend. Every employee is required to attend meetings. Some meetings are regularly scheduled, some are scheduled ad hoc for special events, and others we attend when we're invited. So we document all of these meetings that the incumbents are required to attend and whether or not the incumbent is expected to be the chair of that meeting. Lastly, we document their key processes. There are certain operational processes that the incumbents carry out each day, each month, each week, and some of which may be documented and others that have been incorporated into the position to accomplish certain duties but aren't documented. So operational processes, as we all know, are critical to the success of every position, so we seek to capture and document all of their processes. In each of these categories, as I said before, we go much, much, much deeper than a job description. What we seek to capture is the technical knowledge, the organizational knowledge, the intuitive knowledge, the tacit knowledge, even the tacit knowledge. Now, let's go through those real quickly. Technical knowledge, from an HR generalist perspective, could be something like this. How do I conduct a behavioral-based interview or an exit interview? Organizational knowledge might be, what can I offer an employee whose home was damaged by Hurricane Irene? Or how can I help somebody get an internal transfer in this organization? Intuitive knowledge is a little bit more difficult because it's something that is unique to each person, but it'll be something like this. When do I approach my boss when I want my boss to approve a big ticket item? Well, probably try to catch him at 5 o'clock. He's usually really in a good mood. Not at 8:30 in the morning. Who is the best person to ask to cover a meeting for me? I'll ask Bob because he takes really good notes and he always gets them to me within a half an hour after the meeting is over. Now, tacit knowledge is by definition something that's extremely difficult to document, but we try our best. This is that secret recipe that your grandma made. You know, it's for me, it's a peach cobbler or macaroni and cheese, and you know, your grandmother would stand there and she wouldn't have the recipe written down, and she'd put in a little bit of this, then she'd put in a little bit of that, then she'd stir the pot to the left 3 times and once to the right, and then she'd bump the oven with her hip, and voila, you had this masterpiece. So then, you know, you'd go and you'd try and you'd put in a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and you'd stir the pot to the left 3 times and once to the right, and you'd bump the oven with your hip, and it wouldn't taste anything like grandma's recipe. But we try our best to capture and document the secrets of the incumbents and the positions at risk, even the tacit knowledge. So just as Mia Farrow was capturing and documenting the customs and culture of the villages and tribes of Darfur, we're capturing and documenting the processes and the culture of our company, Metro Plus. Now, moving on to phase 4, we're identifying the high potential candidates to take part in the succession planning pools to be groomed and developed for potential successors to the positions at risk. And we're identifying the gaps in the knowledge, skills, and abilities so that in the next phase, we can create individual development plans to close those gaps. And let me tell you, there are a lot of people super excited to have an opportunity to be developed as future leaders. We at Metro Plus already have a really, really good retention rate, but we expect that as we add more and more people to the succession planning pools, our retention rate will even get better. In phase 5, we will create individual development plans for each of the high potential candidates in the succession planning pools. Now, although we haven't actually started this phase, we're in phase 4, My staff has significant experience creating individual development plans, and I anticipate this phase will run quite smoothly. Phase 6 will implement the development plans, which will include giving the high potential employees access to those knowledge repositories that we created in Phase 3, providing on-the-job training, allowing the high potentials an opportunity to work with and shadow incumbents in the high-risk positions, allowing them to preside over meetings, run projects, in general, giving them whatever training they need, as well as creating some stretch goals for them. Now, in Phase 7, we're going to measure and monitor the progress of the high potential candidates and rank the candidates against potential job openings, and we're going to promote those who are ready. Lastly, in Phase 8, the final phase of our cycle, we will celebrate and prepare to start the cycle all over again with the next level of high potential positions, and we'll continue to cycle through the organization until every one of the at-risk positions in the organization has been mapped and documented. That is how we at Metro Plus are converting individual knowledge into institutional memory. Thank you.